Hey, my name is Eric. I'm an Angular developer. I've been doing Angular for about 7 years, professionally for 5 or 6 years. Um, and this is part 3 of a series as I am developing an idea I had for a new test helper to deal with asynchronous methods and sort of stubbing them out to behave in a way that is going to be familiar for those who are used to using Angular's HTTP testing helpers. Um, so for example, here I've sketched out maybe how it could be used for um, the navigator.clipboard object, which is a native browser API for dealing with reading and writing the clipboard copy paste functionality. So you could set up your controller instead of an HTTP testing controller, which is the one that comes with Angular. Um, you would make a new one of these, wrapping the read and write methods, and then interact with them very similar to how you would this testing controller. So you could expect that it hasn't been called yet. You could expect that read text has been called once and then flush it. And so that would be like, um, this would be for paste functionality where the promise for read text returns a promise with this value, which this would be the content of the clipboard. And you can do things in between, just like you would with while an HTTP request is in flight in your test. You can do the same thing here while any asynchronous browser thing is pending, while you're simulating it being pending. And so we've got the docs up here for all the relevant things for reference, and we are sort of deep in the weeds. The last couple of videos we've been working on this, and we're just going to pick up where we left off. So last time around, we made this flush. So that was this part of the API. I think the next part should be simple now that we've done all the work of flush. I think error should go quickly. So let's just get that out of the way. So continue with, when it makes sense, the TDD style. I'm going to write the test first, see it fail, write the code for it, see it pass. So the test is going to be very similar to the one for flush, but now this time it's going to be for the error. Was it error? Error, because that matches the Angular API, flush versus error. Okay. Yeah. So dot error is going to give us, I need a new line there. That's how I like it. It causes the call to reject with the given reason. If I remember right, that's the terminology used for promises. Let's just look that up and make sure that we're using familiar terminology. So maybe MDN promise. Where do we see what it's called? Oh, I know. Let's go to just like, oh, let's go to the promise. Here we go. In the typing that JavaScript made, do we not have a then? Promise. Finally, nope. That was in 2018. Then on fulfilled takes a value, okay, and then on rejected takes a reason. So value and reason were the right words to use there. Value, reason, resolve with the given value. That wasn't resolved, that was, what did I just say? Fulfilled. To be fulfilled with the given value. And then dot error will cause the call to be rejected with the given reason. Perfect. Terminology is surprisingly important and actually takes some thought and effort to sort of get right or get to be as useful as possible. You want to be consistent, always within your own code base. Never have have the same thing with two different names. But then when possible, within like the greater community of, in this case, programming, because our users are programmers. If I was writing an application for whatever industry you're in, learn the industry terms for things and use them in your code, use them in your meetings, because your product owner is going to be speak the same language then as your sales team, as your clients. It's worth it. Okay, so we have an error here. We reject with the given reason. So we're not going to call flush, we're going to call error. And then I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head how the call is, how it's going to behave. Is this flush microtasks going to throw an error? That's some of the trickiness of TDD. I don't even know how I'm supposed to test this. I know that the error is going to propagate somewhere somehow. Let's just do this, and we're going to have the test fail even though we write some code. Error, the reason is any. We don't actually need to improve the typing of this one later. I am leaving all these to-do comments, and in fact I noticed since last time that I should have put one there. I'm leaving notes for myself to go back and fix all of the typing later. Normally I might do this as I go, but I would like these videos to be at least slightly themed for people to find the video that does what they're looking for. So I'll make a video maybe at the end, once the rest of the API is settled, to go set up all the typing real nice. All right, but this one will actually stay as any, because if you check out how promises work, oh, it wasn't here, it was here. Even though the promise is typed, the rejection reason is any. So that's just what the browser does with promises. There's no better typing we can give it, because the browser, nowhere else is TypeScript set up to enforce the value that a promise can reject with. Well, this is going to, I guess I just need to make this work. Write the actual code before I get a failing test, because I don't know how to write the test. Defer dot reject with a reason. Okay. And if you've been watching my videos, there's a terrible bug when you have some error that gets into karma like this. You never, unless you can remember exactly the steps you took, you're not sure if it actually caught all the right changes from all the files that it should have. Very annoying, but anyway, if we just restart karma, it fixes it. And let's see, we are on test call, yes. So let's see what this thing does in our test. If it throws an error, test call, let's run all of the tests for it. Uncaught in promise, yeah, okay. Good, and that's coming from, oh, the other thing is that my source map, I can't click on this and get a link to my source code, even if I find, I don't even see my own code in the stack trace anywhere to click on anyway. Well, let's do a little trial and error. Let's see if we wrap this in a try catch. that fixes things. Oops. And if so, we'll know to go write our actual test code there. Otherwise, we'll have to keep hunting for how to accomplish this. Okay, it did. So so we want the error spy. Oh no, catch. Let's see if that's another way to suppress the error. Because we put a dot catch on there, maybe it will no longer complain about an uncaught rejection. Perfect. So now we should expect a single call and reset on the same spy with the value some problem. Now we should see that it does have an expectation and is green, and there we go. That was it. Just to make sure that our test is really doing what we think it should, let's set up a failure here since I was not able to follow the red-green refactor normal process. And sure enough, our test is actually doing something. It's catching when we have an error. It's showing when we have an error. Similarly, if we, resolve, we should also have a failing test. Great. So the test is there. It is actually validating that it's working correctly. I think that's pretty good. Normally I would have waited and done a commit here. Instead, I'm trying to commit once per video. So I'm putting a link in the description below for all the code that we wrote during this particular video. So I won't commit right now. Instead, we have to figure out what to do next. So that covered what we started in the last video, which was getting this test call API figured out. And we decided that was everything that the test call needed to do. So that's great. Actually feeling like we're making some progress now. We have like one whole class written and tested. So let's come back to the controller itself now. We have match written and tested, but we do not yet have a lot of the other ones. And expect is going to be the real bread and butter. This is the one that's going to be used the most by, well, at least by me when I'm writing my tests. So let's get that one out of the way. So that's going to be here. We want to make some tests for that. Expect one. Do I have a little template for that? Describe. Nope. I could make one of those and get a little bit of, save a little bit of typing. Now, this is interesting. Okay, so I'm looking at my tests up here, this outline that I wrote for match, because expect one and match have a lot of functionality in common. This just finds one of them, but then also removes it from sort of the pending calls for that still need to be tested. So let's start with a little outline. This is a pattern I like to follow when I'm writing tests like this. Before you go diving way deep into each individual thing you know it needs to do, get sort of an outline of all the things you know you're going to need to test, all the cases. And that can be really helpful. Once you get going, then you've got your plan laid out and you can just cruise through all of them. That's how it always works. It's always an easy cruising when you're writing code, as you can tell by how smooth all these live coding videos are. Sarcasm. Let's see. It finds a matching method call. And it, well, let's follow the pattern, keep following the pattern from up here. It does not remove. It removes the matching call from future matching. What does it do when there have not been any calls? I think it's going to throw an error. Let's see. We want to follow the Angular pattern. So whatever the Angular HTTP testing controller does, that's what we want to make ours do, so that it's as familiar as possible for an Angular developer, because that's the whole point of this API. So expect one expects this single request, return its mock. If no request is made, or more than one, fail with an error message, including the given request description. The given request description, if any. Oh, you take a description. Oh, fancy. Okay, cool. We can do that. And when it says it fails, what does that mean? Does that mean it throws an error? Or does it actually do like a Jasmine expectation? Let's find out. Let's find out. How can we find out? Let's find a test where I've actually done an HTTP request. Let's see if there's one in this library anywhere. Testing controller. Nowhere do I call expect one. Oh, yes I do. There we go. This is in ngDev. The tests are already running. Perfect. Let's pull up the memories service. The test, in fact, let's just run the test for everything. That'll cover us. And then let's see what happens if we get this wrong. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the memory service. Error, expected request. And what's it actually doing at that point? This is in the file Angular context spec. Angular context spec. Let's set a breakpoint on line 304. And step over it. We get into a finally. Although that was the last statement in the block, so it gets here. Let's see if that runs. If that runs, it means it somehow did a Jasmine interface with Jasmine directly to create this error. If that does not run, it means it just threw a JavaScript error, and Jasmine itself picked that up and printed out the problem. Okay, we did not hit that line here. We would have seen that failure message. Let's just make sure by setting a breakpoint. Yeah, okay, so we're going to throw an error with the given message. Great. So, removes the matching call from future matching. It throws an error. Let's say it that way. When there is no match, it throws an error when there is more than one match. And it uses the given error message when throwing an error. Given description, did they call it? It includes, the error message includes the given description. Includes the given description when throwing an error. Yeah, that sounds good. Space this out a little bit. And is that a full outline? Will that tell us everything we need to know about this expect one? I think that covers it. Can't think of anything else. We looked over our documentation here. Nice benefit from reading this and saw exactly how that should work. Oh, and returns its mock. Oh, it expects the, yeah. The expecting it to have been made is sort of it throws the errors. That's the part about throwing the errors. And then returning its mock is what we will cover here. Finds the matching call. Okay, perfect. So, let's write a test. Finds a matching method call. We're going to be similar to this finding a matching method call. It's a tongue twister. We want to find where the value is. We don't need 3 of them for this. We're only going to return 1. So let's find the one where the value is 2. And we want to do expect 1. This is a single match. We're going to expect that single match arg0 to be value 2. Okay. So first let's write oh, whoops. Let me get back to that. That looked like I had, yeah, we want to leave this as it was. Okay, no change there desired. Okay. Okay, we want to expect 1. It's going to accept the same kind of argument as match did, but it's going to return a single test call. We do still want to ensure this is set. And then let's delegate to this dot match. Oh wait, no. Oh yeah, finds, yeah. I actually have to make it return the match in order to satisfy my test. Return index 0. That should be enough. Now I personally like to have methods, because this one calls this one, I like to have it above it. Maybe you like it the other way, maybe you don't care. To me, it's sort of like public goes above private. The public ones can call the private ones, and so I follow that same pattern with, in this case, within the public methods, because this one calls this one. This feels like a sort of higher level method, and so I want to see that one at the top, the big picture first. I think I've heard that called like newspaper order or something like that, where you have the headline, then as you read, you drill into the details, something like that. We need to continue being diligent about these to-dos so that I remember to fix them all. And I want a consistent message so I can easily search for or identify all the places where I used any. Once I go to make that other video, then we're going to give it good typing. Okay. Yeah, that should probably work. Let's, for the sake of I'm trying to figure out how to do red-green refactor. It's just not always natural. So you know what? Why try and be unnatural? Oops, that's still the memory service. We want now the async method controller. Oh, we've got problems. Oh, it's all the ones that I haven't written yet. And those are the only ones we see failing, so this one passed. And now let's verify that it actually, that we can break it. So we verify that it doesn't, there's not something wrong with the test such that it will just always pass. So for example, let's just say that it's value 1 instead of 2. And then we should certainly see that problem there. Okay, good. Verified. Let's move on. It removes the matching call from future matching. Okay. I suppose I could do it with this. Put this in here. we expect 1, and then when we call, yeah, that's exercising the code. Then to expect it, we need to say expect controller dot match anything length to be, and let's start with, yeah, to be 1 is what it should be, because our expect 1 here should have removed this one, leaving us with only 1 remaining. Okay, there's expected 0 to be 1. Well, that's unexpected. No pun intended. I thought this was going to end up being 2. Why are we getting no matches whatsoever? Ah, because we do we want to do write text. Yeah. So we should see that we still have both calls to read text in the match history. Perfect. So now we need to make this function actually do that. Okay. We're going to get around to making this better later. Oh, we don't need to call ensure info is set because we're calling match. It's already doing that for us. Great. What are we doing? Removes the matching call from future matching. We need to get the test call out of there when we find it. So this is going to be the, all right, test call is already named for me. So we want to pull from this dot test calls the test call. Oh, it's index 0. Let me just, I can be a lot smarter about this. Sorry. Should have just hit undo a bunch of times. All right. So dot, I think shift. With an exclamation point. We'll get around to handling the case where that's undefined in our future tests, because we're going to throw an error in that case. But for now, that should satisfy the tests that we've written so far. No. Nope, it did not. Okay. We removed it from the array that match returned, but that's not this array. Obviously, we wouldn't want to be doing that anyway. Okay. Right. Okay, so I do need to go back to something like I had before. Let's just go back to 0 since that's a little easier to, or more common, I guess, to understand. There's our call, and then we're going to go ahead and pull from this dot test calls, test call. And if this works, I'll explain what pull is in case you are not familiar. Sure enough, down to 3 failures. Okay, so pull is a Lodash function, although in my case it's actually coming from microdash. I explained this in the last video that I have a library that mimics Lodash, has the same API, but they're a little bit dumbed down and much smaller functions, friendly for, putting on, embedding into a web app that's meant for a low-end mobile device, that sort of thing. So this is a teeny version of from microdash. How did it know to go to here? Anyway, this is a teeny version of Lodash's. removes all the values from the array that you pass in. That's it. There we go. Turned it to green. Let's move on. Cool. Making great progress in this video. Throws an error when there is no match. Great. So let's probably only need to, I don't care what the values are. We can simplify. I've said this, read text. I've said this a number of times in other videos, but I don't want all these extraneous values and things in there if they're not significant for what I'm testing. I want to keep my test as simple as possible to fully and clearly demonstrate what I'm testing. And in this case, I don't need those values. I'm just going to expect our function to throw an error. And that's going to be this guy. We just need this to be true, or no, false. If it's false, then we know that it's not going to find a match, and so we should have an error. Now we could do this without having called it, and it would still throw an error. So I should think about how to clearly express that. Maybe that should be a totally separate test just to make sure it's well behaved when the no calls have even been made yet. That feels like an edge case to protect against. Well, let me just do this one first. Expected to throw an error and it did not. Okay, great. And how would we get it to throw an error? Let's call this matches and say if matches.length does not equal 1, throw a new error. That's going to be could have been smarter or more efficient about the way I just refactored that, but anyway, that should give us our error, hopefully. Sure enough, we satisfied our test. Only those two are remaining. But I want to throws an error when there is nothing to match, when there have been no calls. When there have been no calls. So we can change this to true and still expect it to throw an error. Great. Moving right along. When there's more than one match, and again, I already wrote it in such a way that that should work. So we're not, again, not really doing our red-green refactor thing here. But such is life sometimes. We should be down to one failure. Yay. Oh, wait a minute. Even if it's true, there's more than one. It should match both of those. How could I have verified, how can I verify that that's actually testing a different case than this one? I mean, I guess I would just say if it equals 0, so now it should be satisfying both of those, or let's see, both of those, but not yet this one. So we should get one failure. And this is now I'm actually testing my test. Okay, we got exactly one failure for when there's more than one match. So this test is written well. It is catching the case that the others were not. Great. And finally, a description. Wow, cruise in. So if the API for this guy takes a expect one, takes a second argument, always a second argument, perfect. A description, which is optional. This isn't that the same as the other ones combined? Anyway, copy. Yeah. A second argument, which is optional, and a string. Let's just not use it yet because we want a failing test to start. We'll start with a test and then go write the actual code. And we just need any of our tests, the simplest one that threw an error, which I think is this one with no calls. And we want to give it now some string like show this in the error. Now we're going to expect it to throw an error where it's the error's message includes that. Any Jasmine? A string or a regex. Perfect. To throw error can take a regex. So we want this to include show this. I think that should test what we want. Certainly it should be failing right now because the message is no possible way it could satisfy that regex. We want it to an exception with a message matching. Oh, that's perfect. But instead it was the empty string. Now let's use it. Let's use it with description. Beauteous. Now we only wrote a test to satisfy that it includes the message that you pass in, the description, but I feel like maybe it would be useful to verify something more than that, even though that's the only thing that the Angular API documented. They return maybe a little bit more helpful error message than just what you included. Let's find out, and if so, let's make sure we test that. Let's get that written and tested that way. Which means I have to go back to that that one I undid, that failure I undid. Okay, let's give this a description and see what the message is. So again, this was the Angular context. Let's see, now that we've cleaned up all of our failures, we could probably feel a little nicer doing them all. Okay, expected for criteria. Show me, that should be criterion. Don't you people know how to make a noun singular? Expected one request for criterion show me, found none. Requests received are, oh man, that's taking it up a notch, isn't it? Could certainly do that. I have my doubts about how useful that's going to be for this helper that I'm making. I'm going to leave that as a possible future enhancement to make the message quite that fancy. at least for this end part where it sort of lists out all of the calls you've made so far. I'm not even sure what I would write here because there's no URL to print in my message. It's a function call. Um, yeah, so for now we're just going to stick with this part. I think this comes from JavaScript itself, so I think this is the only string to worry about. Expected one matching. Let's try that. Expected one matching request for. Oh, I am typing this in the totally wrong place. Let's do it in the test. Expected one matching request for. I'll fix their spelling or no grammar error. Criteria. Ooh, except I have to learn how to spell it. Criterion. Or criterion. Let's make this a templated thing. Oh, this for criterion, show this. Found none. Found none. Ooh. So we should probably test the error message in all the cases, since this is a real nice. I think it's going to be nice for our users to get a good error message, obviously, when their expectation fails, so they know better how to find what went wrong and fix it. Oops. Oh, there was a reason to use backticks, because I want those quotes in the middle. Except I normally use single quotes. I mostly use prettier and don't worry about little style details like that. Do you use single quotes or double quotes or blah, 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 blah. Highly recommend doing that. Stop thinking or caring about how you format your code. If you care right now, stop it. Get prettier and make sure it runs every time. And for me, it's every time I save my file. At least on your team as a sort of a linting step. You can run it as like a linting step so that you require all your team members to always commit code that matches the style that Prettier makes. And then, of course, hopefully they're all going to do that by installing Prettier themselves and having it run in their editor or in a Git hook or something. Because why care? Why? It doesn't. Your code's not. You might have a different style, but it doesn't actually help. It's not any better. It's just different. So give it up. Go with whatever someone else has decided and automated for you, so you don't have to think or care about it, talk about it in your PR reviews or anything like that. I like opinionated things in these kinds of cases, in case you couldn't tell. I have an opinion about that. Okay, so we should have this test failing again. Let's see, let's put this back. So that one should pass, and the one that we just changed should fail. Perfect. All right. So now we need our code to actually do that, which is going to be kind of like this, except here, now we're going to get it into the whole template string thing. We will interpolate in the description. And hopefully that will now pass. Sure enough. Now, in our previous one, it was prefixed by that error colon. Let's see if that comes from Jasmine or if we need to include that ourselves. It feels too common. like something I've seen before. It's got to be coming from Jasmine, but let's just find out. Let's see what gets printed. Yeah, error colon. Perfect. So we don't have to actually write that in our code. That's coming from Jasmine. This now matches pretty closely Angular's error messages. And so let's go back and revisit our previous failing or our previous error tests and get that message in there. And what message should it have when we don't give it a description? Let's go back and find out. Right, we have an error. What can we put? Oh yeah, so this should now have one failure, showing us Angular's error. And it fills in some smart value based on what you passed in. And what value does it show you if you give it a function? Expect one, because that's the case that we have. It gives a function there, and I'm going to bet you that if you have that function named, function no findy, return false, and we use that we're going to get this name of the function in the error message. Oh, what's your deal? Oh, okay, that was just a linting thing. I guess I didn't really need to fix that. Yeah, the name of the function. Okay, cool. So let's write a test for that. First, and then go back and revisit these. It includes the name of the match function when throwing an error. When no description is provided, I guess. Okay. Very similar again, but in this case we don't pass a description. Oh, instead we use let's use this guy. Good thing I wrote out the whole thing and satisfied my linter. Saved me so much time. Okay. Right, and it was match by function. By function no findy. And put this back the way we found it. Okay. That's this guy. Perfect. So now we should be able to satisfy that test. Now we can give this a default value, or we could wait and not assign it a value till we're in here. If I give it a default value, I mean it's going to be extra code that runs in times it doesn't need to. That's not going to make any difference. That's going to have no performance implication. However, will it be pulled out into a default value in my documentation? It probably will, and that's not what I want, or it could at least. So instead, let's do it down here. Let's say description equals match by function match.name. And I have not yet even used this. This is literally the first time I've ever used this nullish coalescing assignment operator, whatever this thing is called, but I remember that it's available now. So if this is undefined or null, it will instead become this guy. Lovely. Then does that satisfy our test? No. Oh, yes it does, but I didn't fix this test enough yet. Cool. And now, finally, we can go back and be more specific about the errors we want thrown everywhere else. And this is going to be match by function with an empty string. And found none is not actually the value we should return here. It is the value we should return here because there are no calls. It is the one we should turn in here because there were no matches. But this one found lookup value from Angular. Okay. So we should be satisfying all but one of our tests now because we have to go figure out what Angular's error message does when we find more than one. Oh, that's... I have to understand this test better to recreate that scenario. Well, let's just see if that does the trick. Found as just the number. Okay, that's probably what I would have guessed. So we want to find 2. And here num matches. When I run prettier, oh, that's going to stay. Okay, that'll work for me. Num matches equals matches.length or none. Because if it's 0, we want it to say the word none instead of the number 0. That's really kind of extravagant, uselessly fancy, but I don't know. I guess it's easy enough. I've already got the tests written for it because that's what I was modeling all of these expectations after from Angular. If I was writing it myself, I would just put the number 0 there. It doesn't really help anybody to see the word none instead of the word 0, or the number 0, but anyway, that's fine. Got that working. Lovely. Gosh, I mean, we're on a roll. I feel like we could cut the video here. Let's see how much is left to finish our API. We got match, we got expect 1, flush an error. We're going to need this. Okay, that's back. Okay. I'm going to move this into my editor and start taking notes about what still needs to have a test written. So I'm just going to make I guess I'll just make a Scratch file. If I expected this to take much longer, I suppose I would make a real to-do that I commit into the repository, or at least put the file in Git. But anyway, so what do we still have to test? Maybe I will make a to-do format. To test, we still need this CTX to the controller to trigger change detection. So that's let me pull up test request just to explain that. Oh, request. Oh, do I not have that in here yet? Oh, okay. Anyway, my vision for the future of all of my test helpers is that for both HTTP requests and as we're writing now, these async requests, that anytime Angular would take care of change detection for you automatically, I want the test helpers to also take care of change detection for you automatically, so you don't, you know, I feel like it's pretty awkward if you're writing tests that you have to know more about change detection than when you're writing the production code. Like, why? Like, if you get intimate with change detection and you have to use that to write your production code, then yeah, it makes sense that you have to have stuff about it in your tests. But if not, I would prefer to abstract that away from the user. So when they call flush, it's going to, just like Angular is going to automatically run change detection when that's interesting. I was going to say when you paste through the navigator.clipboard, but I need to verify that. I don't actually know if zone, actually not Angular, but if zone is going to pick that up and trigger that change detection run. Oh, that's tricky. Users almost do have to know more about zone in this case than I wish they did, even in production, because they are stubbing out asynchronous APIs that hopefully Zone has already aware of and will pick up on. But sometimes if you're at the leading edge, it doesn't. So maybe in the normal case, you're not writing code for the bleeding edge of browser features. It's already in Zone. Change detection is going to be taken care of for you automatically. You don't need to know. You don't need to know how it works. I mean, you don't need to think about it. You don't need to write your own special code for it. And so you shouldn't have to write your own special test code for it. So anyway, talked myself right back out of and then back into my plan. So yeah, the way I'm going to accomplish that is behind this first bullet point. CTX is a context object that I use when I'm writing my tests as part of my testing framework that's in ngDev. That one of its purposes is to take care of all that stuff for you. But in order for our helpers to leverage that, they're going to need a reference to it. Okay. So, right, that was this. We need expect none still. So that was this line, that was this line. We got that covered already. We got match done already. Oh. Right. We got these done, but it reminds me that I would like to do match when you pass it an array of args rather than a function. I think that's going to be the normal case that users want, and so it's going to be a lot easier than writing all of. Well, here, let's go look at the ones we just wrote. Rather than writing this guy, or even crazier, this guy, I want my users to be able to just expect 1, value 2. So anyway, keep that on the to-do list. And I'm just doing this with you on the video because I'm hoping it's helpful for you to see sort of how I keep track of these things and get myself confidently to a finished product before I release it. You gotta keep all these things written down and be, meticulous about it. Or at least that's my MO. Okay, this dot call we haven't written any tests for yet. I think maybe it exists, but we at least need to test it. So that would be the test call dot call. At least needs a test still. And I'm just looking line by line through all of the API envisioned to see what hasn't been done or tested yet. Got that pretty well covered. And we got that pretty well covered. Verify. Perfect. And you know what? Now that I have this in a to-do form, I'm going to go ahead and put this into an actual to-do file. In my repos, I have a pattern of todo.md. And I find it enormously helpful because I have all these projects and I just sort of work on whichever one I feel like that day. If I feel like working on one at all, like it's all just side projects. And so this I find really helpful to, if I feel like working on something and I don't know what, I can just browse my to-dos. If I get to something and I have an idea that it's going to be really great, but I'm not going to get to it right now, of course. And I always know where to go find them. So this is to finish the async method controller. And I just remembered one more thing that I should have written down before and forgot, which is this. Get nth into microdash. If you watched the last video, you know what that means. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Sorry. Okay, this feels good. This feels like a stopping point. Let's go ahead and make a commit. Right now, I am off on a branch, not in master. And I'm going to, if I'm doing something real small that I know I can finish in one sitting, I'll probably just work against master and get it deployed. Wow, sorry, talking about my process is making me remember all these things that I need to do, and I might as well write them down. So at the end of this, we are going to, we need to test all the typing, scour the branch for outstanding to do comments, and finally the one I just thought of was test the what do I call that? Test that it's exposed in the public API. I can write all this nice code for this new async method controller, fully tested, beautiful, bulletproof, etc. But if I don't put it in this public API and write the test for that, then no one can use it anyway. So it's another part of the whole process of developing these libraries. Great. All right, now I think we're at a commit point. So I haven't been doing this in my previous videos, but I thought it would be useful to just give you this tip. When you're making a commit, always skim the diff and write a meaningful message. I don't often go back and use these messages in a case like this, where it's sort of going to be temporary. When I merge this into master, I'm going to squash it down to one commit because the changelog is going to read the commit messages and in my deploy procedure, the changelog is going to automatically get one entry for each commit that has a certain format. If this was an app instead of a library, I wouldn't squash them down like that. I don't find that useful. But anyway, so if this was an app, or now for this temporary one, I'm going to write some meaningful message here for this sort of mini commit. And first, you always want to skim your diff and make sure there's not something you're forgetting that you were going to get to before you were done. And everything is looking solid here. So I think that does it. So we added test call dot error and async method controller dot expect one. And I will get a link to this in the description of the video, to this exact commit, so that you can review the code yourself in GitHub, or check it out in your own editor and play around with things, or whatever you want to do. If you found this useful, or you have suggestions, please let me know in the comments. And I am super happy and pleased that you were able to stick with me all the way through this video. That means that there are some people out there who actually find this worthwhile. I hope. Good luck with all of your coding in your future, and maybe you can look up slibs once this is published live and use it for your testing needs. Until then.